the National Dialogue Commission, NADCO. And this NADCO is one of these outfits that politicians create periodically in order to calm themselves and to enact or to facilitate the enactment of self-serving laws. And that is part of the reason why IEBC has not been constituted, because the politicians want an IEBC where they send their tribesmen and women, where they appoint people who will do their bidding, running away from what we desire, which is an independent boundaries and elections commission. So going forward, what we need is a process that facilitates the appointment of credible individuals who can conduct credible election. Lastly, I know countries where you don't have the equivalent of IEBC. In Germany, you don't have. They just appoint within a certain ministry individuals to run elections. In India, in Africa, we create these bodies because we live on the basis of suspicion and mistrust. So you create a body which is heavy, is expensive, and yet you can't even count votes even when you have created them. So political bad manners will not be cured by enactment of laws or by creation of bodies. We must have a mental revolution and ensure that we inject what I've called elsewhere political hygiene into the way we do things.
You know, the professor has just gone biblical on us. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. Yes, that is.
Political hygiene is a good takeaway. That's a very good takeaway.
Kevin, you want to say something?
No, I think for me, just to reiterate that, it's the idea that we live in constant suspicion, I think, is a problem that is so deeply rooted that I even wonder whether a fully functioning IEBC would be something that we would be able to invest in emotionally in the medium term, that even if the IEBC were to work well, quote unquote, it would still take us a long time for us to believe, you know?
The I in IEBC is independent, isn't it?
Independent. Okay. And whenever you hear people using words such as independent in the body or democratic, it knows there is no independence in those bodies. When you are independent, you don't need to have it as a part of your name. That is part of our problem.
Yeah, and there is the legal aspect of IEBC being formed and being in place because there are timelines involved. That is what the Constitution speaks to the formation of IEBC within 2 years. Now, when we talk about IEBC, the problem, even the entire sending home of the commissioners, is something we knew immediately after the election. What is stopping the bodies that be informing this IEBC to start preparing? Because at the end of the day, we have always seen that IEBC is always being blamed for starting their preparations late, not having enough resources in time or on time to prepare for these elections. Therefore, who is not telling us the truth, Professor?
What is the IEBC? You know, we focus too much on the commissioners.
Yeah.
The commissioners are at a policy level. The heavy lifting is actually undertaken by the Secretariat. So that we focus on the commissioners because they are the public face of the IEBC. And what we are saying is that for the IEBC to be properly constituted, you need the commissioners to give policy direction and policy guidance. And I can tell you, if there was political goodwill, that can be done very quickly. What is happening, as I've said, is that there is so much suspicion. People want to constitute a body to have commissioners whom they can control. When I hear the former Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka saying, we nominated so-and-so, they did so, and I respect the individual who is in place. But how is it always the case then when people are called upon to nominate individuals, they can't get them outside of their tribe? They can't get them. This navel gazing where people cannot see beyond their children and their relatives and their tribesmen is Kenya's problem. So let us now agree that we need to constitute an IEBC properly, and we do it and do it quickly so that they can also go into the business of delimitation of boundaries and other things. The sooner it is done, the better. All these arguments that I hear the Deputy President talking about, that they are court cases, if there is goodwill, all those cases can be dealt with and the interests of the country can be attended to. But you know, there are very few Kenyans. Most politicians are not Kenyans. They see Kenya as a hunting ground. They are actually low-voltage ethnic warlords who are quick to be in outfits such as Mulembe, Gema, Luo. And that is why you see an individual in the 21st century, in a world we are talking about East African integration and African integration, you still have Gema. You still have somebody say the Akamba have joined Gema. You still have the Luo saying that this is now the lake. You have the Abaluhia saying this is now the Mulembe nation. You have the Kalenjin saying this is ours. I wish they could read Koigi Wawa Mwere's Toward Genocide in Kenya, the Curse of Negative Ethnicity. Until we liberate ourselves from such chauvinism and atavism, this country is not going to realize our potential. And I hold the view, CT, that there is a generation of Kenyan politicians who, as long as they remain active in politics, Kenya will never know true progress. Unless we consign them to the Museum of History alongside the spinning wheel, we'll keep on having these musical chairs. And the sooner we realize that, the safer this country will be.
City, you seem to be...
Well, it's the adjectives that are amusing me because they're very appropriate. You see, if you look at the idea behind political parties and how it is and why they were formed around ideologies. Meaning we have this understanding of how it is we feel we need to lead our people, to put it simply. And in this country, we speak of it. We even have manifestos which are documented. The only odd thing is that most of those manifestos seem really alike. Half the time you're not sure which one you're reading, but they all seem to be saying the same thing. Or the thinking is the same. But the thought leadership that an ideology is supposed to bring forth doesn't actually exist. Because if it did, then every time you had politicians standing on the podium to represent a party, they would be telling you that this is our ideology, this is how we see it. And anytime they were in a position of authority, and in this country it's very easy to see it because they're represented in the county governments, you would see that ideology being put to practice. But what do you see? To understand what we see, you need to look at the Auditor General's report.
Yes.
You need to look at the report that the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission keeps bringing up. It tells you exactly what it is. And it tells you the ideology, not the spoken one, but the one which is practiced. Because those two bodies bring out the rot that exists. And that is the manifestation of the ideology. And the professor is actually quite right. If that is the state of affairs that we find ourselves in, then anytime we talk about moving forward, that's all we'll do. We will talk about it. And there are those who think we are stagnant. We're actually not. We're actually moving backwards.
Correct.
We're actually regressing. Yes. Because if generation after generation, the mantra is the same, and yet you're talking about an entirely new generation, you're talking about problems that existed in small measure, which have now multiplied, and the thinking hasn't changed. How do you think you are going to solve these problems? How?
Professor, I have a question, if I may. You know, one of the things that what we need to consider is that at the end of the day, we're social creatures. So especially when things tend to start going badly within the national picture, people tend to coalesce around their tribes even more because of the distrust of the structures around them. So the question is, how do people as Kenyans of different tribes balance between their identity, what they recognize as themselves within a particular group of people, but also to be able to function wholly as a fellow Kenyan?
You know, when we were in the process of making the constitution in the early 2000s, Ali Mazrui delivered a paper in the year 2000. The title of the paper, If African Politics Are Ethnically Prone, Can We Have Constitutions That Are Ethnic Proof? And in that paper, Ali argues, amongst other things, that typically in a number of African countries, Kenya included, the tribe is actually a tool that is used by the myopic politician to manipulate their people. Because the truth be told, if a minister is from your tribe, what change in your life does it bring about? Is the education the sector the better for you because it's from your tribe, or the health sector the better for you, or agriculture the better for you? This is simply something that benefits the individual and a few. And unless we realize that, perhaps what happens is that when a cabinet minister is appointed from your tribe, they slaughter 30 cows for the day. Perhaps that is the only thing you enjoy. But beyond that, they have a national duty, and I have held the view that we can change it. The very reason why, when we were talking about political parties fund, and City, you mentioned it, we were saying that if you want to put together a political party in Kenya, it must have a national face. It must have a presence, physical presence, in at least half of the counties. And we fund them. That is the whole idea of funding political parties, so that it's not dependent on individuals. But we have failed. We have failed because of the quality of the politicians we have. They don't know better. Even the coalitions that we have had over the years, whether it is NASA, CORD, Kenya Kwanza, Azimio, it is tribes, it's tribal leaders who are coming together, and they promise their tribesmen and tribeswomen things that are pie in the sky, things that will never happen. It can change. There is a small group of Kenyans who believe that the Kenyan project is possible. It is not going to be easy. And I remember in the early days in Mozambique, Samora Machel, it is he who said it, that for the new African nation to survive and thrive, the tribe must die. But he qualified. I do not mean that you lose identity. The identity remains for cultural reasons. But we cannot, in the 20th century, use the tribe to determine how we want to grow our economy. And it can be done. And we must stop these individuals. How do we stop them? Is by educating a new crop of voters who will vote on the basis of manifestos. I want to hear somebody telling me, if it is the health sector, if it is university education, if it is agriculture, how are you going to deal with it? And I have given this example ad nauseum. When you go into a plane, you are flying from Nairobi to Mombasa, do you ever ask, what is the tribe of the pilot? You don't care. You simply want a competent pilot.
Pilot, yes.
But when we want our nation to be piloted, we then ask which tribe. So we must make a deliberate, see our neighborhood in Tanzania. How is it that a country with over 136 ethnicities, they have succeeded in ensuring that the tribe does not matter in national political discourse? It can be done. But in Kenya, we don't have political parties. These are ethnic election outfits.
Now, Professor, you said it is a question of EEC, and it is all about ethnic vehicles that put people into these offices. We don't have political parties, Professor. But as we forge our way forward, we are looking at a situation where IEBC has to be in place before the 2027 elections. And the earlier it is put in place, we are at a better place for us to have credible IEBC that Kenyans will say this body delivered to us. And if we just look at the paper today, now Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka denies stalling IEBC selection panel formation. He says that Deputy President Kithure Kindiki said the parties in court are the ones delaying formation of selection panel. Now IEBC CEO Marjan Hussein Marjan has said the commission has petitioned the Supreme Court on whether time for delimitation of boundaries can be extended. This is a legal matter right here.
You know, goodwill and love for country, which we call patriotism, cue us all. If there is political goodwill and people identify what it is that is in the best interest of the country, all those issues that Mr. Musyoka is talking about, Dr. Professor Kindiki talking about, and Marjan can be resolved in a single day. The problem is that there are backroom issues. People say on the platform things that they don't do in the background. The politicians actually want to control the process so that they have men and women who will do their bidding once they get into the IEBC. So what needs to be done is to bring pressure to bear. That the process is credible and that the men and women who are chosen to head that body holding all factors constant are credible. So now that the mood is there, and it appears that this administration, like most, responds to pressure. Now that the mood is there, it is the right time to bring all these, and very quickly, all matters that are outstanding in court, the courts can order that they be mediated within a time frame, and that they be resolved within a time frame. Once that is done, the process of putting the IEBC together will be complete, so that by the first quarter of the year 2025, we have a fully constituted body that can then begin to do all boundary delimitation, registration, and all the things. And part of the problem, of course, is that the mistrust still continues. That is why we print ballots in Greece and other places. We can print, the government printer can actually print the ballots if we were people who believed in themselves, but we don't. So we want somebody to print them for us. So you can put the IEBC together, and it must be put together, but we must also create an environment where we have faith and trust in institutions that we create, and give them what I call operational autonomy so that they can work.